Dubro Suspicion Files.
All right, welcome. Today we are digging into a story that's part history, part folklore, and honestly, part national trauma. It's all about this incredible belief that the very land of a country can be cursed, a fear that has been haunting a nation for over 100 years.
So let's just get right to the heart of it, the big mystery. Can a simple piece of metal, an iron rod hammered into the ground, actually sabotage a country's entire destiny? Could it really sever its spirit, block its good fortune, and keep its people down? Well, this is the central question behind the whole legend of the Iron Stakes of Korea. And hey, if this whole thing sounds like something straight out of a horror movie, you're not wrong. The massive 2024 blockbuster film Exhuma took this exact legend and spun it into box office gold. And in doing so, it totally reignited a national conversation about these mysterious iron rods. It just goes to show you, this isn't some dusty, forgotten piece of history. Oh no, it is a living, breathing fear in the cultural psyche.
Okay, so to really get to the bottom of this, we're going to break our investigation down into 5 parts. First, we'll look at the curse itself. Then, we need to understand the spiritual anatomy of the nation, the thing that gives the curse its power. After that, we'll examine the counterargument, the technical surveyor's explanation. Then, we'll jump forward in time to see how this myth got a second life for political reasons. And finally, we're going to weigh all the evidence and ask, is it a curse, cartography, or maybe something else entirely?
So let's start with part 1, a curse in the earth. This is where we unravel the sinister story that's been passed down for generations. This is the core allegation at the heart of this entire mystery.
The supposed practice is called jimuk, which you can translate as severing the vein. The theory goes like this. During its colonial rule from 1910 to 1945, Imperial Japan wanted to do more than just control Korea politically. They allegedly waged a kind of metaphysical war. They drove these iron stakes into sacred mountains and vital energy points to cut the flow of the land's energy. It's key. And by doing that, they hoped to stop great Korean leaders from ever being born and just extinguish the national spirit for good.
Now, for any of this to make a lick of sense, you first have to understand the body that was supposedly under attack. And that brings us to part 2, the anatomy of a nation.
This is where the traditional Korean art of geomancy, known as pongsu-jiri, comes into play. See, in this worldview, the landscape isn't just inert dirt and rocks. No, it's a living, breathing organism. It has a spine, it has veins, it has vital energy points. It breathes, and just like any living thing, it can be wounded. And this living body is often pictured as a powerful tiger. Let's break down its spiritual anatomy. First, you've got the head. That's the sacred Mount Baekdu up on the northern border. Then you have the spine, the Baekdu Daegon, this massive mountain range that channels energy down the peninsula. The veins? Those are the smaller ridges branching off. And the most important parts are the vital points called hyol. Think of them like acupuncture points on the land. And if you damage a hyol, you could cripple the entire body.
And this right here reveals a whole psychological battle that was fought on maps. On one side, you had Korean nationalists who saw their land as this fierce, powerful tiger. But on the other, many Japanese colonial geographers deliberately drew the peninsula to look like a passive, harmless rabbit. In that context, hammering an iron stake into a mountain isn't just surveying, is it? It's seen as a direct attempt to spiritually tame or even kill that proud Korean tiger.
Okay, so that's the prosecution's case for a metaphysical crime. But what about the defense? Let's move to part 3, the surveyor's gaze. Here, we're going to pivot from the spiritual to the cold, hard, technical reality of the Japanese colonial project.
So, after annexing Korea in 1910, Japan immediately launched a huge survey to map the entire country, mainly for taxation and military control. This job required a massive grid of control points, which they usually placed on the highest mountain peaks for triangulation. Now, just take a look at the table. For Class 2 and 3 control points, the ones used for regional and local mapping, what was a typical marker type? An iron stake. This shows they were a pretty standard, even essential tool for modern mapmaking. The legend even has a supposed villain, a guy named Murayama Jigun. He was a Japanese ethnographer who wrote a book called The Feng Shui of Joseon, where he mapped out all of Korea's sacred sites. The myth? That this was a hit list for the stake-driving squads. The reality, though, is that his work was more like cultural surveillance. The colonial government wanted to understand these beliefs, which, by the way, they dismissed as pure superstition, so they could better control the population, not because they wanted to practice it themselves. And this quote just nails the core conflict. I mean, put yourself in the shoes of a Korean villager in the 1920s. You watch a Japanese team climb your sacred ancestral mountain, drill a hole right in its peak, and then hammer in this long iron rod. Their intent might be to make a map, but your experience is one of pure desecration, a curse. It's two completely different worldviews colliding on the exact same mountaintop.
Now, for decades, this story pretty much stayed in the realm of folklore. But that all changed, and changed big time, in the 1990s. So part 4, the politics of extraction. This is where the myth gets supercharged and actually becomes state policy.
So in 1993, South Korean President Kim Young-sam kicks off this rectification of history campaign. The most symbolic act came in 1995 with the demolition of the massive Japanese government general building. It was this huge, imposing structure right in front of Seoul's main royal palace. And when they tore it down, it was explicitly framed as removing a concrete stake from the nation's heart. Well, that set the stage for a nationwide, government-backed hunt for all those smaller iron stakes.
And the scale of this hunt was just immense. We're talking hundreds of stakes pulled from the ground. And these weren't quiet, discreet affairs either. They were huge media events. You'd have cameras rolling, and often shamans would be there performing rituals to soothe the wounded earth, pouring rice wine into the holes to, disinfect the land's spiritual wounds. It was basically therapeutic nationalism on a grand scale. So we have this powerful, deeply felt myth on one hand, and a rational, technical explanation on the other. It's time to move to our final section and try to reach a verdict. Curse, cartography, or both? And there's a surprising twist ahead.
A really crucial clue is found in the physical evidence, in the stakes themselves. Many of the ones they pulled out have these hexagonal heads. Now think about it. If you're forging a mystical dagger to stab the earth, you'd probably just make a simple spike, right? A hex head is designed to be tightened with a wrench. That pretty strongly suggests an industrial or engineering purpose, like anchoring a surveyor's tripod, or maybe a military tent, or a logging cable.
But just when the case seems closed, just when you think it's all about cartography, a major twist. In 2010, down in Mulwanian County, a shocking discovery was made. 378 iron stakes hammered directly into people's private ancestral graves. And the police investigation came to a wild conclusion. This wasn't the work of some colonial-era ghost. No, it was modern, indigenous, shamanic practice, a kind of local black magic where people would drive stakes into their rivals' family graves to curse their fortune. So the key takeaway here is that driving stakes into the ground for spiritual reasons is also a Korean practice.
Well, that complicates everything, doesn't it? Which brings us back to our big question. Are these stakes a colonial curse or a surveyor's tool? As it turns out, the answer isn't a simple yes or no. This is what we can call the iron paradox. You have all these different truths existing at the same time. The historical reality? Yeah, most of the stakes are probably just mundane tools. But the cultural reality, the surveyor's intent didn't matter one bit. The act was experienced as a curse. The political reality? The myth became a powerful tool for national healing. And as we just saw, there's an indigenous reality too, where stake driving is part of folk spirituality.
Maybe the best way to summarize this whole complicated story is with this simple line. They are cartography in their origin, but they became a curse in their reception. The meaning of an object isn't just about how it was made or what it was for, it's about how it's seen and experienced by the people who find it.
So in the end, these simple iron rods are so much more than just rusted metal. They've become these potent symbols of historical trauma, colonial violence, and the incredible enduring power of belief. And they leave us with a final thought. You can pull an iron stake out of the ground, sure, but healing the spiritual geography of a nation, all those wounds in its collective memory, well, that is a much, much harder task.